about the law. Murphy's Law Podcast, your host, Ian Murphy.
And I'm just like,
this is hard for him to hold back.
So much I want to share.
Remove all the emotion from all of this stuff.
And they never wanted this to happen to the citizens again.
We never stop growing as an individual, right?
All right, welcome to this week's episode of Murphy's Law. We've been off for a week or two. For whatever reason, we'll call it spring break.
I'll call it lack of content.
Drink break.
We gained a bunch of it here recently.
Yeah, so it seems like these things come in waves, waves of nonsense, really. I don't really even know where to start. I mean, I know where to start, but we just got a new... If you've watched the podcast before, you'll know that we did one called Yerp Reviews, right? So we get these crazy people that will send us reviews or messages through our website. I mean, we've had phone calls to the restaurant, all kinds of weird shit. This one came in through our website, so you can actually sign up for our email list and some other things, and you can leave a little message. So we figured we'd start the show off today with a little bit of, well, what we think is comedy. Some may find it quite disturbing.
And by the way, this is why we were chuckling in the intro. I mean, this we literally just read this.
So it comes right into my email, and it asks for certain things: your name, a phone number, message, a valid email. So here, I'm very humbled. Jesus Christ.
We're big fans. We'd slap the shit out of you.
Jesus Christ emailed the Iron Pig today. Although I struggle. This probably is not Jesus. I mean, it does say his email is killyourself@yahoo.com. So right there, it's probably not. Probably not Jesus. The phone number 1-2-3-4-5-6-7-8-9-0. Yeah. I think that one's probably out of order. So the message that Jesus was wanted to convey to us today. Convincing conservatives and their dipshit children to commit suicide is the greatest service one can offer to humanity.
Jesus would slap the shit out of you.
You're not stupid, you're just not lucky when it comes to thinking.
Oh, and by the way, we won't get into spelling errors either.
Jesus would slap the shit. What is wrong with people? I mean, yeah,
well,
okay. Well, we kind of know what's wrong with people, right?
Somebody forgot their meds.
This is another one that kind of went in line with the racist one from like a year or so ago.
Oh, my favorite one.
Yeah.
Cleaning your ovens.
The
anti-Semitic comment. And
this one ranks right up there.
That is right there. I mean, that's almost t-shirt worthy.
We'll give them, I would say a C+ for originality, the Jesus Christ part,
Yeah.
But this is something we've always talked about from the beginning, is this really weird psychosis that happens. People get it in their mind that just because we stand up for one thing, that it has to translate into, we participated in the insurrection on January 6th. Yep. We're murdering babies out on Main Street.
Killing grandmas.
It's like, holy cow, we're just trying to keep our restaurant open.
Is there that many vegetarians out there? Oh, dear God.
So, there's our latest Yerp review for you. Thank you for chiming in, Jesus.
We appreciate you.
We appreciate you. Cheers to you, Jesus.
Yep. Thanks for the email.
Oh no! Dashboard Jesus.
Just knocked over baby Jesus.
All right, so really, the real reason why we decided to throw out another podcast this week, I got an email this morning from the Michigan Liquor Control Commission. Another one.
Shocker.
I know. So, what is happening now is they are sending us back to Zoom court. Zoom court. So what they're finding is a violation from, speaking of insurrection, January 6th of 2021.
Ironic that we just realized that. Look back at the date.
They had sent an investigator and an undercover investigator, whoever in here, January 6th, and they observed a couple of things. Obviously, we were open for business January 6th.
What?
So we were in violation of the now unconstitutional
shutdown
2253, the health orders. So it kind of seems like a little bit of like double jeopardy.
Precisely.
I I don't think that necessarily applies in this case, but there are 3 different violations that they're trying to get us for, all revolving around the health order from that.
Being open, not maintaining social distance and table space, masks.
Yep. So this is not entirely a surprise. So I got this violation last year. So a couple of people had noted that it was a February 9th date or February 21st date on that violation. So we did receive that violation last year. What's interesting about that is, so we asked for an adjournment, which just means that there was a scheduling conflict between parties. So we asked for that to schedule a new date. This came out with a new date. Now, what's interesting, and many people should know if they've ever watched this podcast or follow the Iron Pig at all, is that January 13th of 2022, this year, that law was found unconstitutional. So
Sorry,
here they
Gretch.
are. Bing, go ahead, do it.
Okay. Sorry, Gretch.
So here they are coming back again. That time, the health department is who ended up taking us through the court process.
Yep.
We beat them. We didn't have to pay the $5,000, and the judge ruled the health code unconstitutional.
With harsh language.
So then it got appealed by the state, by the health department, got appealed to first the Court of Appeals, which is the next step up, and then they did what they call a bypass application, which went right to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court ruled a few months ago that they were not going to take up the application. They at least thought that the lower court should hear it first, if at all.
With supportive amicus briefs from the House and the
Several.
Yes.
Three?
Yeah,
Three,
three.
things? Yeah. So here we are now getting a violation from the Liquor Commission. So we're back in administrative court, which is where we started with the health department, in violation of this, which is now unconstitutional.
It just dawned on me, we're going to have to hear Brad again.
So we might, actually. We might. Good old buddy Brad Serpico, as some people might know him. Lovely feller. Anyway, so now they're coming back around saying that we're in violation of that again, even though it is now unconstitutional, this, that, and the other, where there's case precedents. Most likely what should happen is the administrative law judge should just look at those 3 violations, look at the case precedents.
Look at where we're at now.
And say, okay, this is
let it go.
This is moot.
Yeah. As you or I would say, it's a mute point, but in reference to A.G. Fowler, it's moot.
Oh, those lawyers.
It's a moot point.
Those lawyers.
He's quite an actor, though. You should see some of his early stuff.
Peter Pan. Check him out.
Check
Peter
it out.
Pan.
It's true.
It's
a real
adorable.
story.
Yeah, it
you
is.
Ever seen an attorney in tights?
So, yeah, I think we do have it. I think it's saved on our YouTube page somewhere if anybody wants to check it out. So, the interesting thing to see here is what's going to happen. So, any right judge will look at the precedents in front of them, will say these 3 violations clearly have no point. Boom.
Yeah.
The interesting thing that we have known is that the majority of these administrative law judges are appointees. I don't know about, I'll have to look, I don't know if we've been assigned an administrative law judge yet, but the majority of them, my understanding, are appointed by the governor. So usually they're sort of beholden to toe the government line, if you will.
As you know, a lot of judges have.
Right. And before, we couldn't challenge the constitutionality in administrative law because you're not allowed to bring those questions into administrative law, which is why we appealed it outside to get it over to Judge Hunter to have him rule on it. Yep. Thankfully, he wrote an amazing brief, and then we'll then cite that. Right?
Well, and he's set precedents now, and it's actually been, that precedent has been used in several cases, and it's still getting used today.
It has. But it didn't get used in one, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But what will be interesting to see is what's going to happen. What is this administrative law judge going to do? He could just basically wash those 3 violations away. Say, we shouldn't be here.
Would be the right thing to do because it's
and it has happened. Horse. It has happened before that you do get to these points on some things. Whether it's just a simple violation that you were serving after hours or whatever. Evidence has come forward, and they basically just adjudicate it right there at the hearing.
Well, look where we're at now. I mean, compared to when they brought those, I guess, for lack of a better term, violations against you. Mm-hmm. But you've got all this information now, and basically what we've thought and said all along has been verified to be actual true and fact.
Right.
The Johns Hopkins study that these shutdowns and lockdowns were ineffective and didn't mitigate the spread at all.
Yep.
Not to mention the fact that, again, not one case of COVID documented at the pig.
Right.
So, I mean, all these things, and looking what's happened, any judge, just look at it and go, you know what, we're wasting our time. Drop it, let it go.
The other thing that could happen is this administrative law judge could find us guilty of those couple of violations, right? We were in violation. We were open against the orders, regardless if they were later found to be unconstitutional at that time. I'm not even sure that would be a valid legal argument, but at that time, fine, suspension, or time already served, or whatever it was, he could find us guilty. So then what happens is it's very similar to what we did in administrative law. So yeah, the interesting part is if we were to appeal in that situation, if we were found guilty, we would appeal that to get it outside of administrative law. By court rule, it would automatically go to Judge Hunter.
Which, coincidentally, is the one that deemed 2253 unconstitutional.
So I would have a hard time believing that he would then basically rule against his own ruling, more or less. So we would think that if we appeal that through the Liquor Commission to Judge Hunter, that would give us another W. It would give us a W against the health department, and then it would give us another W, and he could basically copy and paste his brief against the MLCC. So there's still an application before the Court of Appeals, and we have the opportunity to go to the Court of Claims, right? There's a case that we're going to talk about here in a moment, T&V Associates versus Elizabeth Hertel. She's the current health director. They went to the Court of Claims and sued, not for money, they sued for a declaratory statement. Saying that this is unconstitutional. So they went kind of the civil route instead of more or less the criminal route.
Again, it's surprising they didn't seek any money. They just wanted an acknowledgement.
I can speculate why they didn't. Unfortunately, I don't want to get too much into this, but that business, they're no longer in existence. Unfortunately, catering business from downstate. But so what would be interesting to see is if it gets to Hunter via an appeal, he gives us another W, copy and paste. So we have basically the exact same ruling. So we now have two pieces of precedence, along with INRI certified questions that the Court of Appeals can look at if they choose to, because that's an application. That's on application. That's not on a right to appeal.
Which I loved, by the way, when the other case we're talking about.
Yeah, he mentioned
the judge brought it up and asked what was going on in the big case, and the look on Fowler's face was.
So he did not want to bring that up at all. So it just will be really interesting to see how this unfolds, especially given the fact that we plan to go to the Court of Claims and really make them pay for closing 14,000
the accountability
restaurants
that we've been talking about. But I'm just disappointed we have to wait that long.
I am too, but it's always reminded to me that the proper process never really is quick.
Yeah, but patience is not a virtue of yours or mine. So
this is true. I will not deny that whatsoever.
That's not.
And our attorney David, said as much. When we started this, it's like, but to that point, it is interesting to see the cases that all of a sudden take speed. One we had talked about a few weeks ago, all of a sudden just popped up. It was the Flint water case. Had been sitting around for forever, and now all of a sudden it has a lot of action.
Well, because then all of a sudden now they went back and used INRI certified questions and cited the pig case, because now, even though it's at idle for over a year, now all of a sudden there's precedent to go back on.
So we have, right now we are set for a Zoom hearing June 29th. We'll see what happens with that. It'll be very interesting to see, given the track that we have been on and where it seems to be going. And I want to make one more point. We put this out on Facebook earlier this morning, and we always talk about tyranny and government overreach and all of this stuff. But it is interesting to note that in now both of these situations, the health department and now the Liquor Commission have got to step on us so badly. So the first time was the phone hearing. We didn't even get a Zoom hearing with the health department. It was all of 10 minutes. Iron Pig is guilty. $5,000 fine. Boom. Okay, we're going to appeal that. They didn't need to do that because that opened the door for us to appeal and then get that unconstitutional ruling. So they had to push so hard that they screwed themselves.
Well, and same with the MLCC. When
That's exactly what they're doing. That's exactly my point.
I mean, with the emergency meeting,
they're going to
suspend
screw
your license
themselves.
and not follow due process, which is their own due process to allow you a hearing.
Yep.
Instead, special secret meeting. Sound weird? It's almost kind of,
Very weird.
We're the conspiracy theorists. And
yeah, exactly. So we'll see how this process unfolds, and of course, we'll update everybody. The Zoom link is on our Facebook page right now, but what I do know from past hearings is that they've gotten wise to other parties coming on, and they will not allow it. So
it'll end up being on YouTube.
We'll post a YouTube link as soon as we figure out exactly what judge is going to be hearing that in the administrative law court. So that'll be coming up the end of June. Again, just more nonsense from these people. We keep telling everybody and tagging all these gubernatorial candidates in this stuff.
Yep.
It's like, what say you about this?
Yeah, and there's been some great responses. I mean, obviously we have some great candidates running for the Republican Party. But man, I'm not going to lie, there's some disappointment brewing right here for one of our local guys.
I don't even want to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean,
go
to the Facebook page of the pig. I mean, there's somebody that stood right here on your stage and beat his chest about making changes, replies with a canned ass.
You might be more upset about it than I am.
I am pissed.
I'm not surprised about it. Let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about this T&V lawsuit. Right back.
The Iron Pig Smokehouse presents Fuel Fest, May 29th, 2022 in downtown Gaylord. Starring Comedy Central comedian Dave Landau. Featuring Nashville artists Skylar Anderson and Chake and Mikula Holt. The kick-off to summer. Live comedy, country music, and the best damn barbecue in northern Michigan. Tickets on sale now at fuelfestnft.com.
All right, welcome back to this week's episode of Murphy's Law.
Otherwise known as Between Two Dicks.
Otherwise known as Between Two Dicks. I should have wore the shirts.
I know. We said we were going to.
Forgot about that.
We'll start keeping them here.
Anyways, I probably just gave it away now anyway. But so my buddy Chris, I just was reeling and didn't even introduce you when we started the first segment. How rude.
Damn, I forgot to. I was going to get a little thing that says "in Chris." Put it up on the
So every episode, we usually change up our little whiteboard with a quote from a favorite movie of ours that usually seems relevant. Hopefully you can read that. This one is from Hugo Weaving. If anybody doesn't know who Hugo is, he is in Lord of the Rings. He's in The Matrix. He also, I'm not sure if he's the actor or if he's at least the voice in V for Vendetta, which this quote is from. And it says, "People should not be afraid of their government. Government should be afraid of their people."
Let tyrants fear.
Yeah, tyrants will tyrant, hashtag.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I know you were dying to talk about the bell. Just go at it.
So, I'm sure you noticed the newest addition to the set. So, everything has a story. And this is probably one of my greatest finds. So, when you decided to close Greystone Coffee, because it just wasn't viable, there was a local business owner that, hell, Saturn Booksellers right next door, probably one of the most liberal business owners in this town, had the gall to give some shitty comment to you of, "Well, Ian, easy come, easy go." Well, guess what? Shortly thereafter, Saturn Booksellers went out of business, and they had a going out of business sale. I found this gem for $3. The best buy in the whole building.
Wait, did you bargain with her?
Oh no. I paid her full retail at $3 because I was not losing this bell.
Take $250.
So we made sure to put the former Saturn Booksellers, easy come, easy go.
I don't take joy in anybody's business going under whatsoever. Any type of business. I mean, unless you're a pedophile or so I certainly don't take play. It's the only bookstore here in town. So I'm kind of sad to see it go. She's been around for 25 years. The new location that they had been in over there, we did the flooring and helped build that out back in 20. We moved into our locations at roughly the same time. Long time. So it's a bummer to see her go. I know that nobody is reopening that shop.
The day and age of a bookstore is really, I mean, especially in our area, I mean, it's tough.
I think they're looking to put potentially a distillery. I can't say which distillery is looking to go in there, but that's kind of the long play over in that space that's a couple doors down from us.
But when the world went sideways, got crazy with COVID and the mask and everything, I mean, that was one place that was like definitely the complete opposite extreme. I mean, you don't talk about the far left side of things. Definitely.
And to almost some extremes at some point. You know, to each their own, whatever. Everybody handles things in their own way, but never did I or us, you know, begrudge them for that, but I feel like a lot of them, not so much specifically, but that crowd in general just, you know, it was a permission slip to
it was
whatever.
And you know, and that's
but you know, to that point about the old coffee shop over there, which, you know, breaks my heart, but you know, at some
put
point
a lot of work into it.
Well, you know, it's tough, you know, opening a business right as the pandemic started, and then continuing it, really, that probably, you know, is a mistake.
And you did have some very loyal supporters.
That's the part of being an entrepreneur too, you know. You just you give it a go, and sometimes you have a terrible idea or a great idea and it's not executed well.
Well, and there's still more.
You didn't have a drive-up window.
You still have Soup and Nudes hanging out there that's still open right now for business, but
so
still.
What I wanted to say about that, though, lastly, about the coffee shop over there, and we can close the book on that one, literally. See what I did there? That back space is going to be rented out by the Democratic Party.
Really?
Yeah. So I just find that a very interesting turn of events. And again, I'm not a Dem, I'm not a Republican. It is what it is. But I think that's very interesting and very entertaining.
Are they going to keep the Weekly Choice dispensary or paper?
I bet it'll be up front. I have a funny story to tell you about that too. Not on camera, but
that's a story
it is very entertaining. So, anyways, let's get to the real. I keep dropping my pen.
Quit.
Drink.
Cue the video.
I don't even know why I have a pen. So we wanted to talk about a catering business out of Macomb County.
Judge Shapiro. I just want to let you know that it looks like we have attorneys for both sides, as well as the court reporter, ready whenever you are.
Well, if you could pause this for a second, Mark. So this basically is what, Dave's always said, don't argue the science, argue the law and the process.
Yeah.
And this is what happens, and what it goes bad when an attorney decides to start questioning the science and why you don't do this.
We've been following this case. T&V Associates is a catering company out of Macomb County. They are now out of business. I think they officially closed their doors the end of this last year. So they are no longer operating. Breaks my heart. They had to close their business. One of the 14,000 plus restaurants, food service establishments is really what we have to call them.
Crazy how quick that number grew.
Because they didn't have a restaurant, they had a catering business. They might have had a restaurant, but either way. So this is basically a civil suit that they brought. They took it to more or less the Court of Appeals. The Court of Claims, which I believe is in Grand Rapids. So what they argue is what you were alluding to is mostly the science around COVID. Even though the premise of their lawsuit, again, it's not for money, for a little background. They weren't seeking monetary damages.
Wanted acknowledgement.
They wanted a statement from the court saying that 2253 was unconstitutional. So the way that we went about it was through an appeal through the court process, allowed us through the administrative court process to get outside of that to question the constitutionality in court. This is a lawsuit kind of from the civil side, right? If you think of one kind of from the criminal, this is kind of from the civil side. Kind of just an easy way to think of it, which is a very, very difficult route to go. My understanding is because Court of Claims is relatively liberal. So a lot of these cases that were tried to be brought up in lawsuits against the health code, against the executive orders, the deck is sort of stacked against us, if you will.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of how the way the deck was stacked in the Kalamazoo School District case.
Yeah, I mean, they really are, and I think, and I, of course, didn't know this. I didn't have, thankfully, a lot of experience in any of this. But those folks that do know better, my understanding is the majority of these kind of associations usually have more liberal appointees than not.
Well, and I picked up on...
And maybe that's just, a function of who's appointing them. And, we've got a Democratic appointing.
Well, and I picked up
people
a new
last 2 years.
phrase that came out here recently, if you look at the national scene right now. And when it tilts in the favor opposite of what they want, now they start looking at judge stacking.
Yeah.
Stacking the bench.
Yeah.
If you don't know, then now they're talking about, with what's going on in D.C. right now, the certain party wants to go to 15 justices in the Supreme Court instead of 9.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we had talked about this with the Comstock Schools case, to reference that again, with some of the behind-the-scenes kind of corruption and hanky-panky nonsense bullshit that happens over there, where one judge is voiding another judge's temporary restraining order. I mean, people have just got to start questioning this stuff.
Friends of the school district
what
president,
the hell
and the
is
school board
going on?
president. Yeah.
So, anyways, the court of claims can be, very swampy. It kind of like administrative law, it kind of can relatively be swampy. So the outcomes generally are not in the favor of these types of things, at least in the last 2 years, or anybody that's kind of challenging the state status quo, whether that's a Republican or a Democrat, right? Those appointees, they like their cushy jobs in Grand Rapids or Lansing or wherever the hell they are.
And don't question what
and
you're being told.
They just kind of, they want to keep that job, right? And rightfully so. So what we're going to look at is a Zoom hearing that was roughly 50 minutes from this last week. Before we get into it, really quick though, let's take one more quick break, and then we'll break this down. Thanks for sticking with us. Now, one more thing here that we want to talk about. It's this T&V Associates versus Elizabeth Hurdle. She's the director of the Health and Human Services for Michigan. She was brought into this lawsuit. I think this has been hanging around for just like a year and a half.
She replaced Gordon,
roughly.
right?
She did replace Gordon. Yeah, yep. I forget where he's off to now, but who cares? He got a fat
Retirement.
settlement. Oh, another thing we got to talk about? Speaking of fat settlements, not necessarily. Yeah, we'll talk about this another time. But our favorite local health officer director got a $250,000 settlement.
Details came
payout.
out?
Yeah. Huge. Yeah. We'll talk about that some other time.
That's a whole nother.
And I hope, what we talked about this before, but with a lot of these gubernatorial candidates have pledged to hold people accountable.
Yeah.
For all the nonsense and the bullshit that they put our state through in the past couple of years, and I hope that eventually somebody holds Lisa accountable.
I hope that it's not just hyperbole and talking points and campaign BS. That's what I'll say about that. Because I'll tell you, we were having a conversation about somebody earlier that actually I don't think you were involved in that one, but once you get down to Lansing and you get in the swamp,
and get an office,
it gets very hard to keep your promises that might be a little bit outside the box or outside the lines for your party in order for you to caucus and certain things and to get bills passed. I mean, so there is an element of that. But anyways, let's get into this case. So
the court reporter.
Charlotte, nice to meet you.
Oh, Darren. Hey. Hey.
Your point is moot.
Hey. He has terrible technology, by the way, but so this is Sean Kelly. He's the attorney representing T&V Associates.
Kelly, can I ask, are you here for the plaintiff?
I am here for the plaintiff.
Okay. Just give me
So
a minute here.
I don't want to go through this whole thing, but this is the Assistant Attorney General. You want to pause this so we don't get... So this is the Assistant Attorney General.
Our buddy Darren.
Darren Fowler. Thespian. Thespian. Darren Fowler. So we've got AAG Fowler. We've got Plaintiff's Attorney, Mr. Kelly, Judge Shapiro, My understanding is, and I could be wrong on this, my understanding is he's a relatively liberal judge. He seems to conduct himself very well in this Zoom hearing, which a lot of times these things can be challenging with technology. But
Darren is really struggles with technology.
he struggles mightily with that. Court reporter, so we don't really have to worry about any of that. So essentially what happens here is their attorney is going to argue a couple of different things. Ultimately, what they're looking for, right, is that declaratory statement from the judicial branch saying that's unconstitutional.
Just an acknowledgement. And
it's a Hail Mary. It's a long shot. If you get the right judge, you might get something in your favor.
Well, and because this is close to an hour, and we're not going to get through the whole thing. I mean, the judge actually asked Kelly several times to focus on the constitutionality of 225 of his case.
It was painful. It was really painful to watch. The three things that he's arguing, or two things to argue in order to get to the main question of, is this law constitutional, in order for the judge to rule on it. Standing, should he even be here in the first place?
Do they have a right to be there?
And mootness, basically. And they kind of can be sort of the same thing, but in legal terms, they're really not. So the mootness portion of it, they bring up because the catering company is no longer in business.
Are you going to start saying mootness?
Mootness.
Damn you.
So, and the other is standing. Should they even be here? They're kind of intertwined into
Which
one.
Darren argues both.
He
does no standing, and the point is moot.
And it's insane that he brings up a great point when they argue the mootness point of it, which is, so if the state doesn't want to have to be in court, all they have to do is put a business entity out of business, bankrupt. If the judge allows that argument to be made, then it's standing for government to say, well, I'm going to sue you till you're out of business, because then when you do get to court, I say you don't have any standing because you're now out of business.
Well, and that's Kelly's answer to the standing question.
Right.
It's like, listen, it is relevant because had the government not done this, my client would still be in business.
And I use this example of these people hate small businesses.
Well, and
they hate them. It's like, why would you even sit there, and how do you have the balls to sit there and say, Your Honor, these people have no right to be here because they're now out of business?
Well, then Darren,
no shit, Sherlock.
Well, then
that's
Darren,
the whole point.
He borrowed somebody else's balls to say that, well, Your Honor, we don't know why they went out of business. We don't know the reasoning. Well,
so
how about a shutdown? Weird.
The part where you're talking about, I've said this from the beginning. Anybody that we've talked to, we've had several conversations with other businesses that brought cases, mass cases, school mass mandate cases, a lot of these things. And what we generally say is, do not argue. You cannot argue the science, right? A, we know it's changing.
Yep.
B, it's in my personal opinion, it's 75% bullshit now.
Yeah.
So you
It's not
cannot.
political.
And at the time when the majority of these cases were being adjudicated in front of, we always said, nobody wants to be known as the COVID judge, right? During the height of the pandemic, when the fear was ratcheted so high, no judge was willing, at least on their own. Now, the Supreme Court did, but that was multiple justices.
Well, and we've had some local judges.
No single court or no single judge wanted to be known as the COVID judge.
No,
Because they'd probably lose their fucking job.
Yeah.
Right?
And most of them deferred.
So we have just said, don't argue science. You cannot, because for every piece of science you have, they'll have another piece of science sitting over here.
Yep.
And they're just going to defer to the state's evidence or science, whatever you want to call it. So just don't do that. And at one point, Judge Shapiro sits there and says, you can argue whatever you want, but I've heard all the science. I'm more interested in the constitutionality of it.
2253.
Again, you can argue whatever you want, Mr. Kelly.
And he even cites that.
Three different times, you guys, he interrupted while he's giving COVID statistics. Now, he had a valid point about the statistics.
It was valid, but he kept going back to only the death rate between pneumonia and COVID.
Right, and he cited some evidence that it was constantly changing, right?
Yeah.
Because we didn't know so much about this, so
It was only half a year
jumped
data
to
in the first
conclusions, and this is a dangerous precedent to set, right? It is a valid argument, but it's not a winning argument, especially in the court of claims,
Because it doesn't
right?
address how this was used inappropriately.
Right. So he goes through the motions, and 3 separate times he gets interrupted by the judge saying, I'm more interested in hearing about the constitutionality and what you think of it. Well, we've briefed it, he says.
Yeah.
So it ends up coming back around. Fowler gives his 2 cents,
Which is the same old bullshit,
which is
different day.
which is the same old nonsense. He obviously is never going to mention his involvement in any other case related to 2253.
And again, he
and
did
we know
not
why,
like-
because he lost.
Yeah, he did
So
not
the
like it.
only, and this is the part where I'm so disappointed, but slightly surprised. Basically, the first person in this entire collection here to mention constitutionality or lack thereof is the judge. And he's basically specifically asking the Assistant Attorney General what is happening with the case on bypass.
The Iron Pig case.
And Darren says, I think the case you're referring to is the Iron Pig case, Your Honor.
That's still on application,
That's-
Your Honor.
That is on application with the Court of Appeals.
Because the Supreme Court kicked it down.
And to the judge's credit, he picks up on the fact that it's an application. And it's not an appeal on right, which is a right to appeal is a little bit different than an application to appeal. So my understanding is, again, I'm not a lawyer. We just pretend to be some on podcasts sometimes.
No, we watch a lot of TV.
So if it's just going to be, I'm flustered because this guy, I've said it for the week since this came out, I think last Monday or something, the 9th is when this hearing happened. And I don't know this fellow. I'm sure he's a wonderful attorney. He's probably a very nice guy. But this was legal malpractice that happened on this day
I felt
for his
horrible
clients.
when you sent me this video the first time I watched it, because he did not do a good job at all.
No, he
Very
never
condescending. He chuckled and laughed several times throughout.
Never brought
presentation.
up in recertified questions, which is
Nope.
the Supreme Court decision from 2020,
Never
which
brought up Hunter.
directly impacts this case right here, which revolves around non-delegation, which essentially is the heart of their argument.
Yeah.
Nor did he bring out the 2022 decision, January 13, Iron Pig versus Health Department. Her office.
And
He
that's
doesn't
really-
mention it.
All he needed to do
He
was
didn't
stand
mention
on
either
Judge
one
Hunter's
of
ruling
those.
in the 2253.
I
That's all he
was
had to do.
beside myself watching this thing.
Instead-
he brings it up. This
He
bozo
led to him.
says, well, it's on application. The judge rightfully says, oh,
Hey,
it's on application. That's interesting.
It's
he
not
says.
Bozo, it's Peter Pan.
Peter Pan.
Unless you saw a different video. There might be more out there.
So he's on vacation. So he brought up some very good points. I'd like to think I know how he's going to rule in this case.
But
He did ask what would happen if he denies this, which would basically kind of it really wouldn't be a win for them, but
No.
it would basically trigger an appeal. Where he's asking, what would you do if I deny this?
Well, and Judge Shapiro, I will say, I mean, and I do give him credit because he wanted to hear something.
Yeah.
That's why he went after him 3 times, I think. For
3 times he
constitutionality,
asked him to address it.
and he just wouldn't. He kept going back to statistics, death rates.
Yeah. I don't know what sort of argument he's going to make. I don't see him ruling in favor of this lawsuit whatsoever.
No.
I mean, it would be
Not
interesting
after
if he
this,
did, but I don't think
God,
that
it just breaks my heart
he
because this
carried the
ass
argument
had a
through.
win because he is absolutely pathetic too.
Pathetic is is a pretty good adjective to use.
I mean, when you sit back and say, Your Honor, we have no idea why that company really went out of business. It could have been anything. Again, no shit, Sherlock.
Yeah.
But what do you think it really was?
This whole thing disappointed me. Probably more so than the Michigan Restaurant Lodging Association giving up on their lawsuit, which was filed before this and potentially could have reached a conclusion. Again, probably not a favorable outcome, but at least it would be on the record. They'd have these folks on the record, and there would be something to show for that. Again, most likely probably not a win for them, but this to me was just legal malpractice. I cannot fathom the idea. Where has he been? Where is he living under a rock?
When the judge
Google it, man.
Yeah, the judge specifically refers to 2253 multiple times, and there's no addressing it at all. It's just a deferment to mortality rates.
Jesus should slap the shit out of him.
Jesus slapped the shit out of most everybody on that screen.
Well, I won't deny it.
I don't. Nothing against Cynthia. We don't know anything. No, she's okay.
So here's another case that's sitting out. He's expected to issue his findings or ruling probably sometime this week. So we'll throw out an update when that happens. Again, we don't expect it to be anything earth-shattering. The Flint water case, I believe there's some briefing that's due on that's coming this week, which
Mark,
we've been following.
Why'd you bring up his nostrils?
It's all you can see now.
Damn you.
So I paused it right there too.
Hey.
Maze.
So a couple of cases we'll be watching. This one included. We don't expect a whole lot from that, but Liquor Commission still coming after us for more nonsense. Real quick, we'll mention Fuel Fest that's coming up May 29th. We've got Dave Landau's going to be here. We've got Skylar Anderson from Nashville. He was on, I think, the X Factor a couple years ago. We've got Jake and Michaela Holt are going to be here, also from Nashville. I do know that candidate for governor Ryan Kelly is also going to be here. We just signed on sponsorship for Michelle Hoytanga is also going to be here that day. So we're trying to line up as many things as we can. It is kid-friendly up until Dave takes the stage at what I think 8:30 or something like that. So it'll be right here out back. We got a big tent coming in.
2,100 people in that tent.
It's gonna be awesome. There's plenty of parking around here. We've got places to stay. We recommend that you stay the night. If you've got,
because it's going to be a party.
If you've got plans that weekend, cancel them. You will want to be here. We're trying to bring in as much fun stuff that we can do. May 29th. Fuel Fest. Tickets are on sale right now. FuelFestNFT.com.
Well, and a reminder, when people purchase their NFT, that's not just a ticket to the party. That's a ticket to all pig parties, and you're throwing your hat in the
VIP and a meet and greet.
Everybody
that we have. Oh, man.
A piece of every potential settlement the pig gets out of this.
Yeah, that's right. That's a big deal. So the other thing, too, is that we're actually giving away, I think, a pair of VIP passes. We've got a Facebook promotion going on right now, so check that out. It's one of these typical share, tag a couple of people, but you actually get an NFT. You get 2 NFTs for this, plus the VIP passes, plus a $200 gift card.
Damn.
2 200s? 2 200s. Wow.
Yeah.
How'd they sell me on that deal? But
did they sell you? I don't think you fall for that.
It's a very cool promotion. Go to our Facebook page, check that out. Otherwise, you can get tickets at FuelFestNFT.com. Thanks for hanging out with us, tuning in with us, having fun with us, drinking along with us.
Yeah, we'll be back soon.
My good buddy, Chris Coon. Thanks always. Murphy's Law. Peace out.